unfiltered discussions, unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello and welcome. After 2 long, harrowing days, I made it back 50 hours delayed from Miami to my house. I don't know if you've experienced this. There was a storm, a couple of flights got canceled, and then once enough flights get canceled and the staff and the planes aren't where they're supposed to be, a cascading effect happens and 100 billion flights get canceled. This went on for 2 days. Anyway, I'm home now. My cat was happy to see me. And by happy, I mean he ran around and bit me. Because he loves me. Let me tell you about tonight's show. In 10 minutes' time, we'll cover our weekly mental health segment, Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday, the world's only mental health-themed radio, intended for a Thursday that airs on a Wednesday night. Tonight's topic, moments in life where our problems are put into perspective. You ever felt sorry for yourself, been put in a cruddy situation? Like, for example, me, being stuck somewhere for 2 days because of a flight. And then you meet someone and their problems are just so much worse than yours. And where they're at in life is just so much worse than you. Well, that's what we'll discuss. After that, we'll venture into the unknown to the Great Sphinx of Giza. You know that big old cat right next to the pyramids? Evidence suggests it's a lot older than the ancient Egyptians. What was it doing there? Why was it built? And if they didn't create it, why did the Egyptians update it to be a giant cat? It's the wonders of the world as we discover the unknown later in the show. That'll be in about 45 minutes. All right, that's merely a cross-section of tonight's program. Let's jump into it.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Let me paint a picture for you for this first story. You're a peaceful Amish guy, out for a moonlit trot on your horse-drawn buggy, dreaming of churned butter and eternal salvation when suddenly, bam, you're living in Grand Theft Horse Buggy. Well, yup, police in Pennsylvania say a man recently pulled off what might be the quietest armed robbery in recent memory, targeting not one, but 2 Amish buggies. That's right, Amish buggies, armed robbery, which in the criminal underworld is just one notch more aggressive than mugging a mime. But honestly, mimes kind of deserve it. Maybe not the Amish. What's the worst they do, raise a barn? The first victim told police he was just minding his Mennonite business when a black sedan pulled up. A man got out wearing dark clothes and a medical mask, you know, like your doctor if he does crimes on the weekend, and pointed a gun at him, demanding his wallet. Awful. Which the Amish man gave to the robber, because even Amish folks who've rejected electricity understand that you don't argue with a gun. It's generally not a two-way conversation. Now, the second buggy driver, though, he was not having it. The robber pulls up, tells him to stop, demands the wallet, and this guy on the horse buggy just flat out refuses. I mean, honestly, other than shoot him, what's the robber gonna do? Engage in a high-speed buggy chase? At best, he's topping out at 10 clicks an hour, and that's downhill with a tailwind and a motivated horse. And what did the robber do when the Amish man refused to give him his wallet? He hopped in the car and the car drove away. Now, kids, don't try that at home or on your horse-drawn buggy. Maybe give up the wallet. Is it worth getting shot over? Anyway, according to the cops, the suspect was described both times as a white male in dark clothes, driving a dark sedan, and wearing a surgical mask. Because even criminals should be polite if they've come down with COVID. Police said the robber had a firearm and was sitting in the passenger seat of the sedan, which tells me this guy had a getaway driver, meaning there were 2 people involved in this scheme. Which is wild, because how do you even pitch that to your buddy? Hey man, want to go rob some people tonight? Sure, who we hitting? A bank? A gas station? Nah, buggies. Amish buggies. And then your friend just says yes to that? Authorities are asking for help identifying the subject, since neither of the victims could describe the driver, which, to be fair, is hard to do when you've just been robbed and your horse is having an anxiety attack. A meltdown? Nay. Now listen, I don't mean to make light of serious crime. Because let's be honest, if you're holding up unarmed religious folk in buggies with a gun, there is a special place in hell for you. And it's probably a barn with no Wi-Fi, no electricity, and someone giving you a passive-aggressive stare down in the corner of the barn, churning butter. Forever. Have you ever thought that you're in a relationship only to find out you were just talking to a customer service rep with a script? Welcome to modern intimacy, folks, or as I call it, romance with terms and conditions. Here's what I'm talking about. Two men from Illinois are suing the adult entertainment website OnlyFans because, wait for it, they believe they were not actually sexting the models they subscribe to. You know, you can sign up to a model's page on that website, send them messages, and they claim they were talking to agencies pretending to be the models, not the models themselves, which is heartbreaking. Especially if you've ever poured your heart out to someone you thought was a lingerie-clad goddess, and it turns out it was just Steve in HR with a content quota. The men bringing forth the lawsuit say they were duped. They thought they were having real conversations with actual content creators, adult, sexy content creators. And if they'd known it was all outsourced flirting, they say they wouldn't have paid so much money to send these models messages. Honestly, I've been in a marriage with worse customer service and higher subscription fees. One of the men says he even joined the site mainly to share pictures of his cooking. Sir, I don't know what kind of eggplant parm you thought was going to seal that deal, but if your big play was zucchini noodles and emotional vulnerability, I can see how it all went sideways. Why would you want to send an OnlyFans model pictures of your cooking? You know what? Don't answer that question. The lawsuit claims that OnlyFans knew this was happening all along and that the adult entertainers were using agencies or, quote, chatters to impersonate them in messages. They say OnlyFans didn't stop it. And let's just be clear here. These chatters aren't AI bots or code. They are actual people hired to respond to subscribers while pretending to be the sexy performer. Somewhere out there, a grown man is being paid to say things like, "You're the only one I open up to," all the while typing it to 500 people in a windowless office next to a guy doing the same thing for a TikTok influencer who thinks gravity is a hoax. But I digress. Now, OnlyFans says creators can work with agencies to curate and monetize their content, which might be a polite way of saying, we don't check who's sexting you back, as long as everyone gets paid. But this isn't new. A lawsuit from 2021 alleged that one agency tricked fans into confessing their deepest secrets to chatters, including sexual fantasies, marital problems, and other dark stuff. Which raises the question, why is everyone trusting their most sensitive feelings to someone named Booty Doll 96 with a verified check mark? See what I did there? I kept it clean with 96. Still, the men claim the deception deprived them of the benefit of their bargain, which I believe is Latin for, I thought I was in love with a porn star, and now I'm just alone with my bank statement. The lawsuit doesn't prove they were speaking to chatters, just that they got suspicious after seeing how one creator responded to hundreds of thousands of fans. I mean, yeah, buddy, if she sent 1,000 videos last night to people she was chatting with for money and still had the time to say good morning, babe, at 6 a.m. sharp, that's not devotion. That's just enterprise-level logistics. There are other lawsuits as well. A previous one against OnlyFans over chatter scams like this is already headed to trial in 2027. Because sure, let's wait 3 years to find out whether paying to talk to a woman who says, "You're so different from the others," was legally binding or just capitalism in fishnets. When one media outlet reached out to OnlyFans for questions, they didn't respond. Possibly because the person who replies to their emails is also pretending to be a sexy nurse in your DMs. So to sum this one up, two guys thought they found love on OnlyFans with a porn star, maybe just lust. But instead they found a lawsuit, a chatbot in fishnets, and a very expensive misunderstanding. The moral of the story, if you're paying money to send a porn star messages, just set your expectations accordingly. Because somewhere out there, Freud is weeping, or laughing, or just trying to get his OnlyFans password reset. Up next, we'll share those intimate, those weird, those strange moments in our lives where our problems are put into perspective. Has that ever happened to you?
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Over the next 10 minutes, we'll discuss an emotionally heavy scenario dealing with mental health, and a discussion about suicidal ideation may come up. So for any sensitive listeners or parents with young children, listener discretion is advised.
When your therapist won't take your calls anymore, there's always The Last Show with David Cooper.
It's Therapy Thursdays. On a Wednesday, we are joined by expert in family and marital therapy to tell a tale of traveling. Gary Direnfeld is here to join me. Gary, oh, what a pleasure. So handsome. Look at that face, that beard, those glasses. No one can see these things, but rest assured they are nice things.
Well, thank you, David. And you have a tale of traveling to tell. Is it a tale of woe?
It sort of. I think in life we get these moments where our problems are put into perspective. Maybe that's our topic.
Okay.
Maybe that's
all right.
So I am due to leave. I visit my mother for her birthday. I go to Miami on Saturday morning. Okay. I was just going to be a quick little weekend thing. I plan to leave Sunday night, and I get to the airport. There's a storm running through Florida, and I get there at 8. Every flight is canceled but mine. I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky. I told everyone I was lucky. I even said in the messages I sent them, knock on wood. I thought that would cover me, Gary. Never does. Knock on wood. And yeah, I get there. Gate changes, delays. The annoying thing is they keep on delaying the flight by half an hour. I'm like, just cancel it already. Stop ruining my sense of hope. 1:30 in the morning comes by. My flight's canceled. I'm upset, obviously. I need to get home. I got to work on the show. I end up getting trapped in Miami for another day. And this whole thing happens twice. But I'm stuck and I'm annoyed. And the people around me, there's families screaming at each other. There's people losing their mind. And I'm annoyed. I'm not going to yell at some airline employee, though. It's not their fault,
One of these adventures in traveling. Got it.
Yeah. Do you ever get that where you watch people screaming at some flight attendant? I'm like, they're not the air traffic controller.
I have seen that, and wrong target.
Exactly. When I finally called and got my refund, because I rebooked with another airline, they just gave me the refund. They gave me a little credit, and they even covered some of my expenses. Not all of them, but some of them. Great. So whatever. I call a car, and there's 100 people waiting for their Ubers, and I'm like, oh no. It says it's going to take an hour, but the second I call a car, I get a phone call saying, don't go where you're supposed to go for the Ubers. Come to departures and come to the top floor. I'm right here. So I jump in the cab, and I waited 2 minutes, not an hour, and I catch my first lucky break of the day. I'm angry. I'm strung out. It's late at night. I want to be home. I get in the car. The guy asks me how I am, the driver. His name's David, actually. David asked me how I am. I say I'm fine. And I asked David how he is, and he said, today's not a good day. What do you do in those moments, Gary, where a stranger and you are all of a sudden in this very intimate exchange? He said very vulnerably, today's not a good day.
You know what? Sometimes we say, how you doing? We don't really mean, how are you doing? We just are being polite. And so you can go one of a couple of directions with that. You can kind of say, and busy yourself in your phone, or you can be empathetic and say, how so?
Yeah, I just thought...
And you never know what you're going to get.
Yes, as you'll find in about a minute, you never know what you're going to get. I just thought, you know what? There's a guy, and I'm so annoyed. I'm so kind of annoyed with my life. I'm like, there's a guy who's not in a good way. I do Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday with a therapist, so I'm basically a therapist myself, minus all the training and ability. But other than that, basically the same. I'm joking. I'm like, you know what? I got a minute for this, and I won't make the guy feel bad or weird. And I said, what's up? He said, I'm thinking of ending it, and it's been a big struggle today. And he starts to cry a little bit. And he said, the only thing that's keeping me going is my daughter, but I only get to see her for 3 hours a week.
Oh my God. And so his saying, I'm thinking of ending it, it's not to end being an Uber driver. He's talking about the big ending it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh goodness, I don't know what to do. I have such limited capacity right now to have empathy. It was really strange because I didn't really feel connected in that moment.
No, but you stepped into something that you just don't want to let go of either.
Yeah, I'm like, I want to help this guy. I'm here. I'm stuck in the car with him for 40 minutes. I got the time. And the impression I'm getting from this guy is he just wants to feel seen. And I've been there, not for many years. I told him that. I said, you don't need to be embarrassed. I've gone through this kind of stuff when I was getting divorced. And that was exactly his problem. He was going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And he's talking about how his ex is doing that and how he's living in a motel and is struggling. And he's kind of unloading all his problems on me. But he's kind of glossed over the daughter thing. And so I was just in my mind really trying to focus on what I could do to help. And I'm like, the only thing this guy's got positive that he said is his daughter. So I started asking him questions about his daughter. He kind of doesn't want to talk about her at first. He's like, why are you asking me about my daughter? I'm like, hey, just what color's her hair? What are some of her hobbies? Tell me about the last time you spent time with her.
You're giving him his connection to life.
Yeah. And he perked up. He stopped crying. And at one point he went on his phone to show me a picture of her and he was swerving. And at that point I'm like, okay, this is getting dangerous. I kind of yelled at him. I'm like, please focus on the road, David. He's like, but I got to show you a picture. I made him pull over to do that.
Wow.
And this
is a really intense situation.
It's so strange because I was in such a way from being strung out and missing my flight. I'm not really like feeling the power of the moment. Only later in the night when I got home and I was alone did it really hit me. And I kind of started getting a bit emotional myself, being like, I can't believe what I just went through. But what kind of connection I just went through. But he was just, he was so upset, but he really did perk up. And I started saying like, in my way, you got something to live for. I didn't quite say it directly because I didn't want to bring the topic back to what he had said earlier about he was thinking of ending it. But I asked him when the last time he slept was. And he said, day and a half ago. And I made him promise me that he would go home and sleep. And I saw him ignore fares on his phone. Like as we were getting close to where he was dropping me off, 3 or 4 fares popped up and he rejected them all.
Good.
And when he got out at the end, he got out of the car and we looked each other in the eyes and his eyes were like red. And I gave him a big hug. And I said, please, David, promise me you'll go home and sleep. And he promised. What do you do in that scenario other than just, because I'm like, do I call someone? If I call the cops, this is not helpful at all. And I don't know his family. He's a stranger. Like, what's my obligation here? I was a little worried that he'd pick up another fare, but I tried my best to prevent that. It was one of those moments in life where you just connect with someone on a very hard, deep level.
You said, it hit you more, kind of after the fact when you got home.
Yeah.
What did you go through with that?
Oh, I just lay in bed and I just was a bit emotionally disturbed myself. I felt sad for the guy, and it's upsetting when people are in a bad way, right? I mean, it's upsetting. I guess you're a therapist. I'm sure you've had a session where you put on a neutral face, you try to be helpful, and then after the session, you're like, wow, I can't believe what those people are going through, and you get upset. I don't know if that's you, but I know a lot of therapists go to therapists to deal with some of the difficulties their clients unload on them.
I think you handled this appropriately, quite frankly. One never knows what they're going to step into inadvertently. And what I'm glad you didn't do, you didn't try to cheer him up.
I mean, I did in my way by bringing up his daughter.
No, you made I see that as different. I see that as you reinforcing some important connections for him.
Grounding him.
In a way that wasn't throwing it in his face, but exploring and enjoying the information about his daughter so that he too could do that.
We're going to continue this conversation with Gary Direnfeld after the break. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Over the next 10 minutes, we'll discuss an emotionally heavy scenario dealing with mental health, and a discussion about suicidal ideation may come up. So for any sensitive listeners or parents with young children, listener discretion is advised.
The show that asks the questions other shows are afraid to ask. The Last Show with David Cooper.
It's our weekly odyssey dealing with mental health. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday with Gary Direnfeld. For those just tuning in, let me get you caught up quickly. I was at the airport the other night trying to escape Miami. My flight was canceled after delay and delay and delay and delay. I call a rideshare. I ask the driver how he's doing, and he says, today is not a good day. And we get to talking, and the guy is not doing well. He's depressed, he's been having dark thoughts about his own life. And so I get him to talking about his daughter, who was really the only good thing that he mentioned while telling me about his life. And that kind of perked him up. He was starting to stop crying, describing his daughter, and starting to show signs of doing a little better. That is where we were in the conversation. Welcome back, Gary.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to say, David, was by connecting him to his daughter, just by wondering about her, being curious, very effective, as opposed to those who would seek to try and cheer a person up. When we try to cheer someone up who is sad, who is suicidal, it's dismissive of their feelings.
Yeah.
And they will tend to, I don't always use this term, but double down on their feelings again. It's like, I guess you didn't hear me. I'm really feeling XYZ.
Yeah, like, come on, don't be upset. You know, come on, be happy. You have to be more positive. That stuff doesn't, when I've been depressed, that's not a way to get through to me.
Exactly. So, you took him, in a sense, emotionally aside to explore the daughter so that he could make the connection.
Yeah.
You weren't throwing it in his face. And, it sounds like you did a good job. It sounds like this guy has been without sleep for at least a day and a half, probably working continuously. So he's got a lot going on. And I thought you were so reasonable and appropriate in your guidance to him as well. And you sound like you expressed it in a way you were coming from very legitimate concern, causing him to feel heard.
I think when people are really struggling and they're in public and they're like on the verge of a breakdown with depression and really going through it, feeling seen is kind of like, I felt like on a deep level when he said, today is not a good day. I felt up until that moment, the guy didn't feel seen that day. He's driving around Uber fares. He's an Uber driver.
And he's probably said that several times already in the day.
Maybe.
And no one has picked up on it.
Maybe. I just, the average Uber passenger just wants to get where they're going. It's not even that they don't see the driver as a person, or they do see the driver as the person. They just kind of are disconnected from the fact that they're in the car with another human being. And that's not like such a bad thing all the time. We're not going to have a deep connection with every stranger we interact with. The checkout clerk at the grocery store. Like it's okay. But at the same time, that must be tough when you're kind of having a breakdown and just see all these people and they're kind of ignoring you.
You're there and you're not there. You're an invisible person in that driver's seat in that moment.
I feel like I kind of cheated because there's a show called Frasier. It was a 90s sitcom. And there's an episode where the whole city of Seattle, where the show is set, is honoring Frasier with like Frasier Crane Day. And the mayor is going to speak at this event. And it's like a big celebration of all the contributions that he had to the city. And he's on his way there, and his father's speaking, and everyone's there. The whole cast is there. And him and his brother are on their way to the day, and vanity causes them to be late. Like maybe his shoes get stained, or maybe, I forget what, some clothing item he wants to improve. And all of a sudden he's going to be late, and the trolleys aren't running, and he can't get a cab, and it's a farce, the show. And there's a series of calamities, and he barely gets to Frasier for Crane Day. At the very end, he catches a break, and he hails a cab. And it's a limo driver that's free, whatever. Gets in the limo and goes towards Frasier Crane Day. And as he's getting there, he asks the driver how he is. And it was surreal. It was sort of like what I was going through. The driver's like, my ex-wife's getting married today. I'm invited to the wedding, but I get the feeling that like her and my kids don't want me around anymore. And it didn't really go as far as to say that the driver was suicidal, but for me, it was heavily implied. And as they get to Fraser Crane Day and the event's happening and he's finally at the park, he decides to stay in the limo with the guy and talk to him. And I saw that episode about a year ago and I was crying when I saw it. I'm even getting a little bit light in the chest thinking about it now. I feel like I had this template of what to do.
Well, it's so weird where we do draw from at times for handling life. And this is life imitating art and art imitating life. I think that fellow was lucky to have you there in that moment. Yeah.
I think there are times in life when we can step beside ourselves and be there for strangers. I'm not saying we should be there for every stranger, but it's a lovely thing to do, you know?
I remember when we were going through the pandemic, I'd be at a checkout line and with intention myself, I'd look at the checkout person and I'd say, I hope people are treating you well today. And I would do that every time, actually. And I did have a few who literally broke down.
I believe it.
No, they're not. And I would just stand there and let them speak. It was, for me, a moment of connection with someone else at a time that was important for them. We never, other people have said this, we never know what is going on in the life of someone else when we catch up with them.
Yeah, we never do. It was funny. It put it in perspective. I was late for a plane.
Yeah.
And it just like all my problems seem so, I'm going to get home a day. At that time, I thought a day late. It ended up being 2 days late. Side note, I'm not the biggest fan of JetBlue, the airline right now. But yeah, it's like, okay, I'm delayed. I got a roof over my house.
These are important
roof over my head.
Moments to remember. These are important moments to reflect on. I think most people have had a similar experience, maybe not as extreme, but an experience of being there for someone else where they've had to set their own self aside somewhat. Couple of months ago, is it that long? No, maybe a month and a half ago, coming back from a vacation in Maui, our plane was diverted because of the crash at Toronto International Airport.
Oh yeah, when the plane flipped.
Yeah. And, initially we heard we were being diverted to Chicago. There were a lot of upset people. And I'm thinking, if we're being diverted to Chicago, because we didn't know what had happened yet.
Yeah.
We just know we were being diverted. I'm just thinking to myself, it's not good. It's probably not us, but somewhere something isn't good.
It's an accident or a storm. I mean, that's
it. And you have to get out of yourself sometimes to be there and appreciate the experience of someone else, where that someone else is going through something particularly significant.
Gary, you are an oasis in the dystopian desert of this program. I appreciate you so much coming on, chatting, letting me share my story and helping me work through it. Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. It's the world's only mental health segment intended for a Thursday that airs on a Wednesday night. Gary, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for being there when you needed to be there.
Oh, so sweet. Find out more about Gary Direnfeld at yoursocialworker.com. Up next, the mystery, the wonder of the ancient Sphinx in Egypt. Who really built it? Spoiler, it might not have been the Egyptians, at least not at first. Are you curious about that? Stay with us.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. we're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Did the Egyptians build the Great Sphinx of Giza? Or did someone else? The answer might surprise you. You won't believe what happens next. It's clickbait on Noah versus the unknown. I'm here with Noah Cappe, a TV host, to discuss all things ancient Egypt and then maybe later all things subterranean Turkey, not the bird.
You know, one of these weeks, one of these intros, you're going to transition into not just saying television host and Noah from the unknown. You're going to say friend or friend of the show. So, you know what I mean? Because we're knocking on the door. We're not there yet.
Noah, I'm going to finally tell my therapist I made a friend. It's like been 38 years we've been working on this one.
Okay, again, I'm on the record. We're not there yet.
Oh, okay. Damn it. I'm getting there.
Oh, this is an exciting one, man. We talked briefly about the Sphinx on the last episode.
Last weekend.
And we're going to dive in a little bit deeper because this is one of those places that is full of wacky mysteries.
And there's a lot of evidence, and it's not just crackpot evidence, that the thing was built or maybe remodeled, you know, having just done a minor facelift on my apartment, you know, new coat of paint, maybe knocked out a closet, you know, little things.
A little freshen up.
The Egyptians, they remodeled the Sphinx, basically.
Listen, the wild part of this is that there's really not a lot of actual documentation for a civilization that wrote everything down through hieroglyphs on the walls, on pillars, everything being documented in such a degree. There's nothing about the Sphinx. There's mention in the dream stela, which is the big kind of stone that sits between the Sphinx's front extended paws. If you've ever seen, there's this like really interesting kind of arch-shaped stone right in between the paws. That was actually carved like 1,000 years after Khafre apparently built the Sphinx. This is where the timeline gets weird and then whatever. There's no evidence of that. Nobody says he did. He doesn't even say he did.
I'm talking about archaeological evidence, like just the basics of stones being constructed and doing like, you know, carbon dating or checking for erosion, like these kinds of, but you're right, there's nothing written, but it does appear that they were there before. It does appear like it was an ancient structure within.
Yeah, no question. I mean, from an archaeological standpoint, they're going to say, you know, 2500 BC, somewhere in around there would be the time period that it was built. But the number one argument, and we again briefly touched on this last week, is the water erosion theory. And that is the thing that from a scientific standpoint, you know, I say this all the time, Noah versus the unknown. It's like, I'm not here to put a tinfoil hat on and just spew all the wacky whatever. We acknowledge the science and the archaeological component of it. The science in a lot of ways is backing up this water erosion theory. It's a limestone ground, and if you look at it, they'll say, oh, it's wind and salt that's like burrowed these vertical channels down through the stone. No, it's like you look at them, you can tell, even a person who's not in the whatever, it looks like water's poured through rock.
And in terms of the written history, like in hieroglyphics, if you were a great pharaoh that remodeled like a decaying structure and just made it, you know, gave it a facelift, put on a cat head, wouldn't you want everyone to say that you constructed it? Wouldn't you want to say that it was yours?
I mean, the head is so disproportionate in size. It makes no sense. Again, there are statues and carvings in Egypt that through technology today, they're able to shine lasers on. And the face, when you divide it in half vertically, like from the top of your forehead to your chin, going down through your nose, cutting it in left and right, that the stone face carvings in some of these statues, one in particular, is like decimal point exact on either side. Every dimension of eyes, sides of mouths, cheek structure, everything is exact, as if somebody didn't just do it by hand, that there was like assistance at another level. It's it's too perfect. It's statistically not possible for somebody to kind of pull that off. So for a civilization that's doing that, to then shove this weird misshaped head of a pharaoh on what is clearly the body of a Sphinx or Anubis, which is like a famous kind of like god from the time, that would be more likely to me.
Are there areas of the Sphinx we haven't explored? Like, I hear rumors that there's tunnels down there that we're not looking at. There's sometimes seismic surveys that say there's tunnels. I don't know that the scientific community is super behind that, but there are people that would like to excavate under there. Do you think there's anything hidden underneath?
Well, I mean, look, let's like quickly kind of like go from one side of this to the other. You can start at the wackiest side with Edgar Cayce. I mean, for you can remind people, Edgar Cayce, an unbelievable, I don't know, what do you call him? A psychic, a prophet, a person who was able to...
From me, like the skeptic, the scientist, I would say he was a quack or a kook, but he has long said there was hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx with ancient records from Atlantis, or, it starts to get more and more
records.
But even if it's only partially true, like obviously I'm hoping I hope Atlantis is real, but I doubt there's evidence of that. Although you might disagree on that one.
Well, guess what? I just got an invitation back next week. Atlantis it is.
All right.
We're talking Atlantis.
That one, it's going to be a hard time to convince me. But back to this potential hidden chamber, maybe that would have records of the history of it if it existed.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar Cayce had a lot of predictions that weren't right, but he also had a lot that were. I mean, and I'm not,
if I say you flip a coin and I'm a psychic is like the god or the forces are going to tell me it's heads, I got a 50% chance of being a psychic, right?
100%. But if you also tell me the direction that coin is going to face and how many times it's going to spin around before it drops and those types of additional elements. But yes, he said that there was a hall of records, that the history of the planet, including Atlantis, this like civilization advance that kind of is behind these main structures. Because again, tying back to the water erosion, the only time the water was pouring in at that level was about 7,000 BC, which would have been a melt-off, a mass or whatever, which ties into our 10,500 BC cataclysmic earth-changing event. Everything gets frozen over, and then boom, you've got this massive flood of water that's coming through. These structures already existed before. Göbekli, Atlantis, the Sphinx. They're older. It lines up with Leo in the constellation from 10,500. I mean, there's so many pieces of evidence that imply that this thing is just older.
Okay, who built it? I got to ask.
It's got to be an advanced ancient civilization, and it does tie back to whoever was on this planet at around 10,500 BC and got wiped out. Whatever was happening before that time period, you've got things like Göbekli Tepe, the Sphinx. These places all have physical places that we can now find, timelines and things, evidence that connect back to that time frame. To me, this is evidence of an advanced civilization. And that's the exciting part about, is there something underneath? If there isn't, why won't they let us check? Why is the Egyptian government just putting their foot down on this and not letting us check? Why under the front paws is there different stone that clearly somebody has done something? Oh, they did a renovation for say whatever. Baloney. There's a hole in the Sphinx's head, there's a hole in its butt, and there's a hole in its back, and they won't let anybody go down these tunnels.
You're falling victim to a trap here. You're saying just because they won't let us do it, therefore they're hiding something. They might be hiding something, but just because a government won't let you do something doesn't mean that it implies there's some deep, crazy secret there. It doesn't mean that it doesn't, but it could just be as simple as they don't want to bother with the paperwork, or they don't want to have the structure collapse, or they don't want to let foreign scientists in. There could be other reasons. Having said that, it does pique the curiosity. It does.
It's a weird one.
Speaking of weird ones, I said it either last week or the week before with you. I love me a cave. I love an underground secret structure, whether it's a natural one or a secret ancient man-made one. And that's what we're going to talk about after the break. A city found in Turkey underground that could hold something like 20,000 people, all in tunnels, levels, ventilation shafts. We are going to discuss that with Noah Cappe on Noah versus the Unknown in a moment. I'm David Cooper, and this is The Last Show.
The Last Show with David Cooper. procrastinate your life away with us.
I love me an underground structure. Could be natural with stalagmites and stalactites. I never remember what those are. I'm here with Noah Cappe on Noah versus the Unknown. Noah Cappe is a TV host and perhaps future friend of mine, and we are going to discuss Direnfeld. I should have asked you how to pronounce this at the commercial break, shouldn't I have?
No, you nailed it, man.
I did?
Direnfeld. Yeah.
I love when a mysterious underground structure is unearthed. I love it even more when it's kind of like discovered by accident. And I love that people figured out things like ventilation shafts and lighting and where to store things. And I don't know. It's almost like an ant colony at that point. There is a city that was discovered, unearthed, under a Turkish town.
Yeah, Cappadocia,
carved in volcanic rock, so somewhat easy to carve out. And it was able to hold 20,000 people. We had wine cellars, we had chapels, we had schools, we had ventilation shafts. We had, I imagine, some sort of system for pooping down there, and I want to know more about that, Noah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's what we're going to open up with number ones and number twos. First of all, I think stalactites are, like tights go up. Or something, isn't there like a thing, like a real reminder? It's like the tights go up, so stalactites are no? Anybody?
I have no idea. I just know they're those triangular things that grow either up or down from caves. Now, I don't know which is which.
Well, somebody out there listening right now is just like shaking the thing, you know what I mean? Like, it's the ones that go up. Direnfeld, last week you said you love an underground tunnel, so I thought we got to talk about the big one, the headliner, the poster boy of them all. This is obviously, we're 280 feet into the ground. That's about 28 stories deep. Think about that.
I do think about it, and I do want to talk about how they dealt with poop down there. But the main question is why? Is it to hide the city from a very politically turbulent area at a politically turbulent time? You know, from invaders, from war? Was it to protect from some natural disasters? Was it a response to a climate catastrophe? Like, why would the ancients have spent the time and effort to build an underground city, which, let's be honest, wouldn't have been amazing to live in? You kind of need like sunlight to be happy and all that.
Yeah, you're down there because you've got to be. I mean, unless you just happen to stumble into like 19,999 other weirdos who just want to be like human ants. Is that the new sequel to Human Centipede?
It might be. I like it.
Heyo, what? We've been canceled? Look, this is a weird place. This is one of those where you can say, this is fairly recent history. This is the time where Romans are sweeping across, killing and whatever, and people are hiding underground. Or you go back with the other theory that this is much more ancient, that this is like a doomsday bunker, that the level of what this was built, this was not we're going to hide for a few weeks or a few months while this war happens. This is a facility that is like, we need to be here for years and years. So to me, that starts to lean more towards that doomsday bunker side of things. And that's where people are saying, is this as old as an Earth kind of like, cataclysmic Earth event?
Yeah, I mean, there were stone doors in these tunnels to seal them off. I mean, that could have been to protect against intruders. It could have been for a variety of reasons. It could have been war on the surface and climate catastrophe on the horizon. How do they feed themselves down there? They got like livestock. Obviously, they can't grow crops and stuff, but like it makes you wonder. They must have had some pretty advanced technologies for the time to feed and allow for these people to breathe.
All of it. And you touched on it. I mean, the combination of air, like ventilation, like shafts that are built throughout the whole facility, for lack of better words, that run up to like hidden exits in the ground above, to these massive tunnels dug even deeper into the ground to like just pull groundwater up, that they can like elevator up on pulley systems, they're assuming, just like, a fully functioning, for all intents and purposes town with even a church, even a place for an acoustic room that was built with the focus on sound and acoustics. So that is the church space, this religious space. I mean, that level of care and detail being taken for each individual room. Who's doing that for a few weeks? You're thinking we're down here for years.
It was accidentally discovered in the 60s, too, when someone living in a house above the ground was renovating. Did they follow the permit that they filed? Who knows? They broke a wall, apparently, and all of a sudden there's a tunnel, and it's like, what? Could you imagine buying a house, doing a little remodel, and you knock a wall or you knock a floor in the basement or something, and all of a sudden you are the first one entering, rediscovering ancient underground ruins?
It's crazy because I think the two of us are going to have exactly opposite answers. And I wonder what people out there would say. If I broke my wall open or behind the fridge or some whatever, and I found a tunnel leading into the earth, 0% chance I would go deep. I would maybe grab a flashlight and get 5-10 feet.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I'm exact. And
are you going in?
There's no way I'm going in. I am glad it's discovered. Right. I think it's cool. Once the experts go down there and set up lighting and check the air and decide that it's safe, I'm visiting on a guided tour. You know?
Oh yeah. I'm gonna spend time down there.
I'm not an early adopter. As much as I love an underground tunnel, I'm scared of an underground tunnel.
If you're out there and you're like, oh, I'm going in, rent a movie called Barbarian and then tell me if you would go in.
Oh.
Anyway, this place is wild. The massive circular doors that you touched on, which lock from the inside. I mean, I think, and again, like an advanced level of architecture, of mathematics, not just the ability to be able to dig out that amount of earth and stone and all of it. Plus, it's deeper than we've classic, whatever. They won't let us go deeper. But there are additional levels that we haven't dug. There's still more to discover, and they haven't been able to get deeper yet.
18 stories this thing is underground. Like the level of engineering is well beyond what I think most people assume was possible back then.
Yeah, I mean, 18 floors, 28 stories, like to our traditional measurement in the sense of depth. I mean, just so that people can really understand, imagining almost 30 floors of a building, spinning that around upside down into the earth.
Vaulted ceilings, beautiful rooms. This wasn't just like a bunch of dirt like you see in a coal mine. This was like a beautiful city.
Jump online and just type it into Google. It is Direnfeld. It's in Turkey, and to the images that'll come up that show you like that like you said, like an ant colony, like that cross section view of what it looked like. It's unbelievable.
It certainly is. Are they doing tours of it?
I think it was open. I don't know to what degree now. Sometimes it closes, sometimes it's open, but yes, you can get in there. Are we going?
I mean, we'll do a field trip. We'll do a remote. Do they have internet and fast food down there?
We'll run a cable. We're going to do an episode live from the 18th basement.
Let's talk about the vents. The last thing, these shafts, like, were they still functioning? What did people think they were on the surface? Like, how did the people living above this place not know that it was down there?
I mean, I guess you're talking about a time period where you're probably not walking around thinking there could be 20,000 people underneath the ground. This has to be somewhat newer advancements, steps or whatever. This is plus I can't imagine how they did it, but based on what they did underground, there's no way that whatever ventilation was coming up above ground wasn't hidden or integrated into the rocks in some way that you wouldn't even know it was there. This is a great one. And man, when we talk about Atlantis next time, the dots will continue to connect. We're going to blow minds. Everybody's got 1 week left before their mind just spills out of their ears.
But the fish people they can just breathe with their gills, is what you're going to tell me next week, right?
Listen, the fish people we're going to talk about it.
They're on tour right now,
Everybody lick your lollipop.
Yeah. We're going on fish tour. We're I don't know what do fish fans do? Play with devil sticks, hacky sex. Noah versus the unknown. Noah Cappe, TV host, joins me. Check him out online. I think if you just search Noah versus the unknown, he'll pop up. Noah, what a pleasure it was to have you on the show.
Always a blast, buddy.
Oh, what a pleasure. Up next, someone who did the research as to whether AI is good at research. And the answer is no. That's according to a human-led study. So the cyborg scientist won't be helping us out so much just yet, and we'll dig into why up next. I'm David Cooper. This is The Last Show.
For those who know that questioning everything includes questioning this show's existence. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Is artificial intelligence an effective research scientist? Well, no. According to a study that was led by humans and their human bias, are they trying to keep the robots down? That we'll find out with someone who worked on that study. His name is Geoff Tomaino. He's an assistant professor of marketing at the University of Florida. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. So just to dive right into answering your question, yeah, this paper is all lies. The AI actually did our jobs better than we ever could, and it's all over.
Good. I'm glad we're having fun with it. But let's start serious. Let's start simple. I think the fear is, for a lot of people, is that AI is going to start doing everyone's job. Maybe AI will do all the research for us. Will it do good research? That's, I think, what you're trying to investigate. Is AI an effective scientist?
Yeah, exactly. So that really was what we were trying to look at the paper. And exactly like you said, there's a lot of people wondering whether AI is coming for their jobs. And we started wondering the same thing. And we said, all right, well, let's put it to the test. So what we did in this paper was we laid out the typical path we'd take for doing a research project. And we just tried to let the AI do as much of that as possible. So we said, okay, let's just let an AI go wild and try to run this project, do everything, and let's see how it does. And that's really what we did with this paper, is just seeing where it was capable, where it was less capable.
Now, AI does do some things good. Like computers do, like, for example, protein folding, which is a smart phrase that I don't even know what it means, but it's important in bioinformatics. I also don't know what the word bioinformatics means. But there is a limited subset of stuff where AI is really good at like number crunching or guessing or taking huge volumes of data and making little predictions. But you're thinking more in the general sense. Can AI co-author a paper with me?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's really good at certain things, even in the research domain. So what we found in this paper is that it's actually pretty good at coming up with ideas. So we used it at the ideation stage. It was able to come up with creative, novel ideas, which is the bread and butter of what we do for a living. Where it also really shone, though, was on coming up with experimental methods as well as in stimulus design. So not just in this paper, but in other work I've been doing, I've actually been using AI a lot to design experimental stimuli. So what I do as a behavioral researcher in a marketing department is I do psych experiments. So I have people exposed to a few different stimuli depending on their experimental condition, and I see the effect of I don't know, like a company bragging about taking your data versus not and seeing how that impacts your attitudes towards companies. Something like that.
Let me take a guess. If a company steals my data, I will love that company.
Absolutely, forever. So what we found is that AI is actually pretty good at that stage of developing the actual stimuli. So saying, imagine you're on this website and they say they're doing this with your data. How are you going to feel about that? Now, normally what we would do as behavioral researchers is we would write all that ourselves. We'd come up with a scenario, we'd come up with the measures, those types of things. Turns out AI is actually pretty good at doing that stage. So much so, in fact, I've got another project. It's not published yet, but what we're doing is we're actually letting the AI develop stimuli in real time in response to the experimental participant. So it learns a little about the participant and then actually tailors the stimuli in real time to the participant while they're taking the study to make the study more relevant to them. And it nails it. It honestly is really good at that stage.
So it's good for certain tasks, number crunching, helping you design experiments. What is it bad at? What right now are we not able to replace people with?
Yeah, so I will say, so I'm just looking, like we have a table in this paper basically documenting where it does well and poorly. Where it really stood out to me as doing poorly was in the manuscript production. So we had all the pieces, we ran the study it suggested, we actually got the results. I mean, that's one of the craziest things, is it was like, hey, I think you should run this study, test this prediction. We actually ran that with human participants, and the AI was right. Its prediction panned out. So we gave it all these materials. We said, okay, go make a paper, write this, 20, 30 page paper for us so we can send it to a journal and be super successful on your labors. And it just flopped. I mean, it wrote in a really kind of trite way, didn't incorporate the details that it needed to, didn't relate the findings back to the literature the right way. So that's really where it fell very short. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on kind of how it's programmed to limit its resource consumption, But my guess is that part of it's probably to do with a normal behavioral research paper is going to be about 40, 50 pages long. And I would imagine that the AI probably does not want to expend the resources to write like that. So it probably condensed a lot of things. But yeah, that's really where it fell short, was we couldn't just hand it our materials and tell it to write the paper for us, which is a shame because that takes forever to do.
Speaking of your paper, the phrase cyborg behavioral scientist is used in the title of it. What does that mean?
So what we're referring to there is the fact that moving forward, it doesn't seem like the AI is going to be able to do our personal jobs entirely for us, but it can do a lot to help us. It can design the stimuli for us. It can help us come up with ideas. So that's really what we're getting at with this whole idea of a cyborg behavioral scientist, is some of our parts are going to be robot now, but some of them are still going to be human. So it's going to be a mix. And I got to tell you, even in projects that have nothing to do with AI that I'm working on, I do feel like a cyborg. I used to be decent at coding JavaScript. I'm sure nowhere near your level, but I used to be decent at it. And now I just tell AI to program my JavaScript for me. So like, in many ways, I'm becoming the cyborg researcher I prophesied.
Researchers take a lot of pride in their work. You know, professors write papers. They use big words. You know, that seems to be very important to them. They make them impossible to read unless you've gone to school for that subject, which I love and hate.
Yeah.
Does the presence of AI in the paper writing process, is it going to like affect the joy, the craft of it? You know, is it going to kind of ruin academic journals and the whole process there, do you think?
That's what we're worried about. So, you know, I talk about it being really good at designing stimuli. It's actually really fun to develop stimuli to say, hey, I want to test this prediction. What's a good scenario to come up with to test that in? Or how can I design this? It's actually one of the more fun parts of our jobs. So yeah, it will suck a little bit of the joy out of things. And you asked me how it's going to affect the larger academic ecosystem. Where we're really nervous is if it starts being used heavily by reviewers. So kind of the bedrock of academic research is peer review. And you send your paper out to your peers and they review it. It's a really good descriptive title for that.
Thank you. I'm dumb. I'm not that dumb. I got that part.
And what we're really nervous about is if AI starts being used heavily in the review process, that could really mess up the ecosystem. Mainly because then AI as a reviewer is going to reward things that it likes to see. So then it's going to encourage me as an author to become an even more robot side cyborg and do things that are more AI so I can please my AI reviewers. And then it's all just going to go downhill because we'll eventually kind of devolve into bots talking to bots. Kind of like, you know, that dead internet theory, but for research.
The dead internet theory. Do you want to go down that? I feel like that's a little tail conversation. Basically, when the internet is all just bots talking to bots, trained on bots, and it just goes to nonsense. I mean, I feel like I see it on social media now. I see comment threads on Twitter or X, and I'm like, none of these people are real, and they're talking to each other.
Yeah, you know, I heard that Meta is considering having bots go on its platforms just to like spice up conversations and kind of like stir the pot. I don't know if they're actually going forward with that, but if they do, I'm going to be the first person to start a research project on that. You just wait.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. That's now, certain academic journals, they're asking people who use AI to actually disclose it. Is that something that you're seeing, or is that something that you do when you use AI to assist you?
Absolutely. So, yeah, a lot of our major journals in marketing, they do want you to use that disclosure. And fortunately, in my opinion, there are people who disagree with me, but fortunately, in my opinion, they also absolutely outright forbid it if you're a reviewer. So if you're an author, it's okay to use it as long as you say how you used it. But if you're a reviewer, absolutely not. And I think the reason the journals want you to note if you're using it is mainly so they know which parts to give more scrutiny. So what we found in our paper was the AI really kind of flopped on the analyses. And it's not because it's a bad computer, it's just because it didn't go through all the data. So if I say an AI did my data analyses, I as a reviewer then am going to say, okay, I need to double check that because I don't know if it's capable.
Well, Geoff, thanks for talking to me about how robots are not going to be research scientists, at least not yet. I appreciate your time.
Not if I can do anything about it.
Geoff Tomaino is an assistant professor of marketing at the University of Florida. Up next, it's everything you wanted to know about coffee with a food scientist. Is it good for you? And is it going to be getting more and more expensive soon because of, international trade and stuff? So grab a cup of joe, unless it's too late for that. It's definitely too late for me. I'll be up all night. Strap in, because that's what we'll cover on the other side of the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505 6644. Broadcasting intimate details and useless information from an undisclosed location in New York City. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Have you ever heard the phrase, "Don't talk to me until I've had my morning coffee"? Well, what if they came for your coffee? What if the coffee was so expensive you couldn't have it? And also, what if coffee was more healthy for you than we thought? It seems like coffee's always getting researched as more and more healthy. I am here with the food professor, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Did I pronounce that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, Sylvain, let's talk all things coffee. I'm excited to chat with you. I got food questions.
You sound like it.
I have so many food questions about coffee. 20 years ago, like when I was a kid growing up, everything in the media said coffee was bad for you. Now it seems like every bit of research says that coffee is better and better for you. Why the flip-flopping? Why the back and forth there?
Well, I don't think there's a whole lot of flip-flopping going on with science. It's just we got better at it. Food science is an intriguing discipline. I'm editor of Trends in Food Science and Technology myself, and we get manuscripts and papers from all over the world, and there seems to be some consensus around coffee. To be honest, I think more and more researchers, more academics agree that coffee is a desirable product for your diet. Of course, you can't overdo it. Of course, if you do overdo it, and that's sometimes will get into headlines, and that's what people hear. Oh, coffee's bad for you if you drink too much of it. But if you actually drink a reasonable amount, depending of your weight, depending of who you are, you'll be fine. And I actually speak at the National Coffee Conference in Toronto every year, and so I got the McDonald's, the Starbucks, the Tim Hortons, all the big chains in Canada in the room. And business is good. And not only that business is good, they actually can use coffee as a bait to bring more customers into their stores. Like McDonald's has offered coffee for free for a while, and now it's at $1. So you can tell that coffee is an incredibly popular drink. It's actually the most popular drink in Canada after water.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've had that. That's pretty good, that water stuff.
Yes, absolutely. It doesn't taste much, but it tastes like American beer.
It does. Why? They used to say smoking was bad for you. Are they going to start saying smoking? No, I'm kidding. It's a terrible joke.
No. All the people that were saying that are now dead.
Just proves that it's maybe not good for you.
Yeah.
Price hikes coming to coffee. Will we see, I feel like every time I go to a coffee shop, a latte, a cappuccino, I remember them being expensive 10 years ago at these, yuppie, fancy cafes. Maybe $4, maybe $3.50, maybe $4.50. Now I go out, I feel like a cappuccino's $8 now. What is going on? Is it the beans that are more expensive, or is it the stores that are just hiking the prices because they know they can?
Well, it's been interesting. I mean, I think you're talking about the third place, the place between work and home, and that's really Starbucks' forte. They wanted you to stay there, be comfortable, and drink an overpriced coffee for a while, and maybe two, and that was the deal. Now, actually, people are more in a hurry. It's more about the product itself. And frankly, in some cases with some chains, we have seen price hikes, and I think we're going to continue to see some price hikes. But they're a little bit more careful. For many years, many chains have actually relied on this pumpkin spice phenomena.
Yes,
and I mean, there's lots of jokes about that, but it's actually seriously profitable. Like, they actually make a lot of money. They re-engage with the public, and even though pumpkin spice is not really coffee, it just brings in a new market segment that typically wouldn't drink coffee every day. It's a treat. And so you got really the coffee industry catering to a lot of different segments. The big concern that the industry has right now are the young folks. If you go to university, and when I go on campus and I teach to students, about 20 years ago, most of them had a coffee mug, and that's basically, or maybe water. Now it's like the You got the sugary drinks. You have the energy drinks as well. All sorts of drinks that are competing against coffee. So coffee is not as popular with the younger crowd, and I think the coffee industry is trying to re-engage with them. But with coffee prices, it's going to get tougher and tougher.
Are we going to see hikes relatively soon? And what's the reason for the hikes?
So there's retail and service. So retail, absolutely, because when you buy a pound of coffee in roasted coffee in the grocery store,
they don't sell them by the pound anymore, Sylvain. They sell them by 3/4 of a pound. Coffee has.
That's true.
Every time I see a bag now, it's not a full pound. It's been a victim of shrinkflation across the board.
Shrinkflation. Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And sometimes if you actually look very closely, if you buy the larger package, it comes to you much more expensive by the pound, by the way. So you have to be really careful. They get you if you want more. Can you imagine? If you buy more, it costs more. So the coffee aisle is really a tricky place, retail. But if, for example, if the price of coffee globally goes up by, 20%, you will see retail prices being impacted much more directly. With service, there's lots of processing going on. There's labor. There's lots of things that are happening that are actually, diluting the impact of higher coffee prices essentially on the market. So let's say if a chain like Tim Hortons or Starbucks increases the cup of coffee by, 10 cents, that may actually result in a much higher percentage retail. That's really how it goes.
Are people like cutting down their coffee because beans are getting more and more expensive? I'm reading that people are like rationing because shelf prices have increased.
Well, they don't cut on the first cup. They may cut on the second cup or third cup. So that's, yes, people are actually more careful. And of course, they may actually decide not to stop at that third place in between work and home because, of course, you pay a premium for that cup of coffee. And so, yes, people are more careful, but they're not going to stop drinking coffee. When you look at some of the data, right now, anywhere between 85 to 90% of adults in Canada will drink a cup of coffee once a week, which is a lot.
I'm trying to think, is there a huge markup between the stuff that's sold on the shelves and what the, farms actually or distributors ship?
Yeah, no, if you go to a grocery store, you're looking, let's say, for example, you're looking at a bag worth $20. You have to pay $20. That's the retailer's margin is about 25-30% on that. Okay, just about. In service, it's way more. So if you buy a $7 coffee at Starbucks, it's at least half. It's at least 50%, if not more, depending on the drink.
I imagine even more. Like, how much are the materials in there? Plus, the alternative milks, they always do like $1 surcharge for oat milk. And
they've stopped.
Not here in New York. They're still doing it. And I'm like, isn't oat milk cheaper than regular milk?
Well, they need to get sued because in Canada, chains are being sued for that because there's just no justification. Plant-based products, plant-based alternatives are actually now cheaper than regular milk in Canada. Now, in the U.S., milk is cheaper. So I don't know about the plant-based. Like I haven't looked at the comparison between plant-based, like almond milk, for example, versus regular milk. But my guess in America or in New York where you are, I suspect that plant-based alternatives are still more expensive because milk is much cheaper in the U.S.
Okay, so it's justified. I just thought it was a little...
It may be justified. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't looked at the data, but in Canada, it's just not justified at all.
Well, thanks for this stream of consciousness odyssey about coffee. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Sylvain, it was great to meet you, and thanks for the chat today.
Take care, David.
Dr. Sylvain Charlebois is a professor at Dalhousie University at the Agri-Food Analytics Lab. He's the host of the Food Professor podcast that's available wherever podcasts are found. Thanks again, Sylvain.
My pleasure, David, and you take care. Huh?
What kind of boom does a pro hockey team see when it hires a local player, one from the same city it's in? We'll find out after the break.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The Last Show with David Cooper, where we utilize non-linear reverse, inverse, backward thinking protocols. It sounds like this.
Some hockey fans love goals, others love fights, but everybody seems to love a hometown hero. A local kid can actually make your team richer. How much is a local player worth to a city just for being born nearby? Well, almost $5 million. I am here with someone who researched this. His name is Édouard Perron. He's a researcher at the Sauder School of Business at the University of British Columbia. Édouard, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate the invite.
Are you a hockey fan? Because if you're not, the fact that you researched hockey is so funny to me.
Of course, I'm a big hockey fan. More specifically, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan, so sorry for you. So it's something that I really loved researching, and I'm really passionate about it.
Don't be sorry for me. I was never actually a huge fan. I lived in Toronto for many years. I lived in San Francisco for many years. I guess that's the Leafs. I guess that's the Sharks, and now I'm in New York. Isn't there like 75 teams in New York? I can't even keep track of them all. Don't worry, I'm team agnostic. You're not going to offend. What inspired you to look at the economic value of homegrown NHL players who grew up near or in the city that they play for?
I think it's twofold. First of all, growing up Montreal Canadiens fan, I always had a special place in my heart for local players. So players that could really identify myself. They were not necessarily the best players, but they were players I really admired and I really loved. And then the second aspect of it is that there's lots of media attention around it, where teams are always critiqued for not having enough local talent on their team. So I was really wondering what's the effect, if there's one, that justified this critique.
This study's particularly interesting right now with the icy relationship between the U.S. and Canada because of the tariffs. I feel like Canadians would really appreciate their players to be Canadian, and maybe less so Americans would really appreciate their players to be American in response. So it's kind of interesting that we have this data going into what seems to be an increased rivalry in hockey. What did you find? What did you find a local player does to the revenue of a team?
What we found is that a game played by a local player increases attendance by 0.02% and revenue points by 0.05%. However, a player can play 41 own games during a season because the season has 82 games. So taking this into a whole season, it's about almost 12,000 fans, an increase, and almost $5 million in American dollars. So quite a big effect.
So roughly 210 million billion trillion Canadian dollars. It seems like small margins, like a fraction of a percent. But when you're dealing with such many hundreds of millions of dollars in this sport, it really does work out to be a huge difference. Why do you think NHL fans are so excited about a local player's birthplace?
Well, I can only talk for my own experience. They don't necessarily have to be the most talented players, but they can just be players you can look up to, players that you can associate yourself to. It's also quite a good marketing tool for teams. So teams like to advertise those players, whether they're good or bad. Usually the media will be around those players. They usually act as spokespeople for their team. So there's a few ways in which they can be attractive, but overall, it's quite a big effect.
What radius did you draw from birthplace to where the team is played? Like, what do you consider a local player in terms of distance?
So we consider a local player a player who's born within 100 kilometers of the arena or within the home state or province. So it's a twofold definition again.
And if I'm born in the city itself, does that confer a slightly better benefit?
No, that's not something we took into account, but that's certainly an extension that would be possible to look at.
And do you think the emotional connections that the fans feel might actually help win these games? I know it's anecdotal. It's hard to really quantify emotional connection, or maybe it isn't, but or is it just purely like a dollar and cents thing?
That would be certainly something interesting to look at. In our study, we just control for the effect of results, so whether teams are winning or losing. But that certainly could be something to look at, because sometimes we there's two trains of thoughts. There's the people that think it just adds pressure to the players, and there's those that think players are more comfortable when playing at home, so could do better. So certainly would be something interesting to look at.
Anything surprise you as you comb through this data to try to figure out what this connection was?
Not really. I think it just confirmed things that we were thinking. One thing that was interesting is that we found star players had a bigger impact than just regular players. So if you're a local player and a star player, then your impact will be bigger for your team.
Oh, interesting. So with star players, people will come and it doesn't matter where you're born.
Yeah. So star players do add up whether you're local or not. But we also looked at local star players. So we looked at both of them. So star players in themselves have some attraction power, and local players that are star have a bigger impact than just a regular local player.
I feel like sometimes teams, it might not just be hockey, they kind of manufacture localness. They might have a player from a different country, but they'll be like, he lived here for 5 seconds. And then they'll get him in a press conference saying, I have a strong connection to this city because I lived there for 5 seconds. Do you think teams try to play this up even when it's not really there to get that boost?
Yeah, of course. That's something definitely teams can do. And I think that's something that probably pays off for teams. One thing that we were limited with our data is that we only had the location of where a player were born. But we know some famous players are born in a place and grew up in another. So that's certainly something that'd be interesting to look at. And one thing that we couldn't do with hockey was look at where the players have played before. There's no like straightforward path to the NHL, but looking at some American sports, that'd be possible to do. So looking at where players played NCAA, for example, whether they can become local players there, that would be interesting to look at.
I quit hockey when I was 12 years old. I was the assistant captain of the team, but my dad was the coach. So, should I have been the assistant captain? That's up for debate. I am currently worth $0 to the Winnipeg Jets. If I joined the team and I was born in Winnipeg, would that automatically make me a nobody worth $4.8 million?
I mean, it depends on your performance on the team, but I think you could be...
bad. It would be bad performance. The first body check and I would be done. I'd be in the hospital. That would be it. But could I be worth that extra money based on this science?
Yeah, potentially you could. And I think you would certainly have some attraction for the fans. You'd be able to talk to them easier. So whether you're good on the ice or not, you would still be able to... talk to the media, attract some fans potentially.
I don't know why I chose Winnipeg because I'm born in Toronto, but I just people have a tumultuous relationship with the Leafs. Could this be a secret weapon for a team that's struggling? Just hire local players, even if they're not, the number one picks.
Yeah, certainly. What we found, and what is consistent among all of sports economics research, is that performance on the ice is the number one driver of attendance and revenue. So the number one goal for teams shouldn't be to attract local players. It should still be to win. But sometimes we have two players that are the same, or when your team is losing. So sometimes there's some cycles where the team will lose for a continuous amount of time. So you still have to find ways to connect with your fans. So that's certainly something that could be of interest for those teams.
If you could speak to franchise owners, coaches, team owners based on this study and tell them anything to get their teams on track, what would the advice be?
Probably tell them that the more they can appeal to their fan base, the more profitable they will be. So whether that's in hiring players that the fans like, or whether it's hiring local players, there's multiple ways we can think of coaches. But yeah, just trying to appeal to their fan base as much as they can.
Well, Édouard Perron is a researcher at the Sauder School of Business at the University of British Columbia. Édouard, thanks for having fun with me on this one, and thanks for doing the research and sharing it with us.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
All right, you like what you hear, but you just tuned in and you missed most of the show, or you're not going to hear us one night and you're distraught. Well, I got good news for you. You can stream the last show on the go. Hear what you missed and listen to us anytime. Just check out our podcast. That's available at www.lastshow.pizza. That's lastshow.pizza, not .com, .pizza. There you can find out more info or just search David Cooper Last Show on your favorite podcast app. Subscribe and give us a listen. That's the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. My goodness, do I appreciate it, listener. Singular intended. Tonight's broadcast was brought to you by Moist Elbow Incorporated. Hydrate your elbows or suffer terrible consequences unleashed from hell. Or not. I mean, I don't hydrate my elbows. I'm David Cooper, and this is The Last Show.